Hi, I'm Jamie Vester and I'm the pastor of Southern Beaches Anglican, a new church in the southern region of Tasmania. We've been planning this church and asking people, what is the church in the community? And the overwhelming response is people don't understand what the church is or what the church can do. So how do we help people go on a journey to discover what the church can be in their community? Historically, the church has relied on people coming inside to understand who God is and why the church is relevant. So how do we help the people who are not in the church buildings, who are outside the church buildings? How do we help them to understand what the church does and why it's relevant? To understand that better, we're going to speak to the Reverend Joel Kettleton, who's the rector of this whole area. So Joel, tell us a bit about this building and this area.
So this building is one of the first church buildings in Tasmania.
Yep.
And much like a lot of the early church buildings in Tasmania, was built for two reasons. One was to make a gathering place for Christians because it was a new place to live in, and so they wanted the Christians to gather. The other thing was it was built as a way of reforming people. So we had new settlers and we had convicts here, and so actually a church meeting place where people could learn about Jesus would be the start of a new kind of place to live with Christianity as its basis. So that's why these buildings were made and were important in that early story of Tasmania. So the congregation's never been really big, and it's struggled to support a minister, and it's had to join with another church and share its minister for the best part of the last 100 years. Traditionally, the church was a place where people came, and it was assumed that everyone believed in God and was part of a church. And yes, there were people who genuinely loved Jesus, but there were actually a whole bunch of people who faith was a very private thing, and they probably couldn't articulate the gospel or the way that Jesus changed their life. And so the idea of the church growing apart from birth, maybe, or people moving to an area was unheard of. And so if you have a look then at what that means spiritually, we had people who weren't formed as disciples with a robust faith. And then as the world changed through the wars, and then the culture changed around us through the 60s and then the 70s, and from then on it's just absolutely accelerated. The world has changed, but the church has not. So the idea that you would come to a place to express your faith with other Christians, whether that's a strong faith or maybe just a faith that you've inherited, has not lasted the test of time. And so if you have multiple generations, all it's taken is the last kind of 3 generations of people for that pattern to happen. And now we see whole generations missing in our current church buildings, the places we meet in. There's no real reason for them to engage with what we do here. They think this is the place where the Christians come together. They're not Christians. Why would they bother with what happens here? They see the church's reputation and the bad stuff that it's done, and they also see, like if we're talking about historic stuff, the church making some tough calls on the bricks and mortar side of it, and they're largely unimpressed. So they're uninterested and unimpressed all at the same time.
In the Bible, Jesus often refers to himself as the Good Shepherd and Christians as sheep. And I know just the person to talk to about growing sheep numbers. Across the peninsula near Port Arthur is a local shepherd who knows all there is to know about rearing sheep, and I'm paying him a visit. Let's talk about it. G'day.
Hi Greg, how you doing?
Hey.
You know Wayne, don't you?
Yeah, I met Wayne over in Melbourne.
You did?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, how you going, Wayne?
Good, how you doing?
You heading off somewhere?
Break the camera.
I did. He made me do it.
I'll come back down.
Righto. This is Greg Skeggs. He's a 5th generation sheep farmer. He's also the grandfather of my children. Because about 10 years ago I met Greg's daughter, Claire. We fell in love, and since then God has blessed us with a wonderful family and with wonderful grandparents who help us and share the load. We often come down to Greg's farm just to get away from the city and away from it all. And this farm and this land feels pretty much like our home. But for Greg, it's more than a home. And running a sheep farm isn't a walk in the park. Every year, amongst the list of many things that he needs to attend to on the farm, Greg also needs to keep stock of not just how many sheep there are, but also how many he anticipates will be replacing them to keep the flock alive.
Well, it could be 600 or 6,000, but to see the life of a sheep is about 6 or 7 years. So when they are 6 or 7 years old, depending on their mouth, what their teeth are like, they go. You sell them off as what we call aged sheep that you're finished with. Otherwise, the next year you keep them too long, you'll have too much. They'll die. Some will die off, and so you need that 100 young sheep coming in. Otherwise, after 6 years, you've got no sheep. You see, if you don't grow your flock, if you don't look after your flock, and you don't replenish with those young sheep every year, after 6 years, you've got no flock.
Greg estimates that he needs to breed or buy about 100 sheep each year to reintroduce into the flock, to keep the flock at a sustainable level. If he doesn't, the flock will dwindle away and eventually there will be no flock.
But you've got to bring young sheep in, because eventually they'll die. And it's just the way life is. We've seen a similar situation with our churches while we're selling off these old churches in Tasmania.
Yeah.
We're selling them off because there's no one goes to them. And why does no one go to them? Is because young people haven't been attracted to them. Young people haven't been attracted to these churches, and that's why no one goes to them.
How then can the church find a way to replenish its flock? Well, it starts with asking a very simple question. What is church?
You've got to understand what the church is, and I think Christians are confused a bit, just like the people outside the church might be confused as to the purpose of why we gather. So Jesus called us to gather together as a collective people. He saved us to come into a people, and the Holy Spirit works amongst us as a group of people. So there's quite an important thing to understand, that the church is a collective identity. So you belong to a group of people. That's the first thing. Now, the idea that we can be a Christian by ourselves, why do I need to come to a church, is I hear this all the time. I can just stay at home and be a Christian there. Well, yes, but actually that's not what you're saved for. And it's not what you're saved into. You're saved into a people, into a community that transforms and is transformed. We're not supposed to be silos. We're supposed to be part of a body, a group, a building, all joined together. To be part of a Christian community, a church, is to actually to be able to experience God's love through other people.
For a few years there, I wasn't part of a church community. And reading my Bible is great, but when you're with a church community sharing the Bible, just the Bible, you are getting grounded, so ideas don't get astray that feel really right. I think back to this time last year, and I was so alone. I was really, really lonely and alone. But it's so much nicer to have a family and be with people. And my world is bigger, so I feel like I'm living here at Dodgers, like I live at Kettleton, and when I moved here it was like a caravan park for me. But now it actually is, and I can go and visit people at their sites.
Certainly we are all individual believers, but it's kind of like something that's not operating the way it was designed to. So you're never going to reach your full potential as a follower of Jesus. You're never going to be able to love the way He's called you to without the other people around. You're part of something that's bigger than just you. Yeah, I keep encouraging people to meet together in communities with other Christians, and in fact that's how we will do ministry and mission in this changed society, is to do it as a community.
I think one of the key things to building a foundation of new ministries and ensuring that we're serving the community is to understand what the community wants. So we went out and asked the question, what does the community want from the church? What are some of the issues in the community? Because we want the community's worries and concerns and troubles to come into the church, that we're worried about the same things the community are worried about. So we heard from them that they were worried about the schools, they were worried about young adults, not having anything to do, and lonely people. They were also worried about people in the community that couldn't get a hand. And so some of the things we're doing as a church in new ministries are an Adopt a Neighbour program where we go and help people clean up their yards or wash windows or whatever that might be as the church.
Look at the backyard.
We have a music night where people can come together and just play music and have fun and be part of something bigger. And one of the new ministries that we've just started is a mentoring program in local schools, connecting people who want to help with people who need help.
Ultimately, the church today must answer its calling to be a blessing to its community, to love our neighbours just as Jesus loves us. This is our church, one that invites all to come and join us together on this journey, to lend a helping hand to those in need.
I think one of the things that helps do is for people to see what the church can do so that they can ask for help. If people don't understand what the church can do, then they don't know how to ask for help when they've got problems.
Some appreciate the help, some don't. But all you can do is try to help and help those people by doing humble things.
And we're able to open that door just enough, that prayer, so we could, have that extra. That would be great.
So, we've learned a little bit about where the church has come from, where we see it going, and we'd like to invite you to come and join us to help us grow our churches and connect with our communities. You can connect with us on Facebook or send us an email. We'd love to catch up and chat to you about it. Okay, until next time you randomly catch me playing guitar in the middle of one of our church buildings, I'm Joel Kettleton. See you later.